Hello and welcome. My name is Leah Kopke, and this is my 3D modeling podcast, Ambient 3D Animations. Today we are working on more details on our pinball machine. We had created the castle and the bumpers for the pinball machine in the last episode. Today I'd like to focus in a little bit more on working on the treasure chest. We'll also work on adding in buttons around the machine as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So here we are inside of Cinema 4D. We are basically where we left off. We have this octopus here. We have the pinball table main form put in. And if we turn on the volume builder and the volume mesher, you can see what this looks like voxelized. The voxels are a little bit smaller for the castle we made and the bumpers with the seashells on them. And we will be painting all of these individual cubes later on so that they all look nice together. But for right now, we're just focusing on the 3D modeling process. So let's go ahead and get going. We definitely need some buttons here, and we can see here on my mood board what these typically look like. So it's good to always have a reference going so you can see what's happening. It looks like we have a start button here. We have this button here. We have this top area, and let's go ahead and get started. So start button, pretty simple. We can do that with a cylinder. We're going to need to turn that cylinder around. And we're going to reduce its size. Let's try 0.5. And I'll move this up. That's a little too small, but it's a good starting point just to get placed. I'm reducing the height. I'll just add in this guy right over here. Increase the height a little bit more. Increase the radius a little bit more. Until it visually looks right to me. I don't need a ton of height segments. And then since this button is going to be voxelized anyways, it doesn't need to be super detailed anyways. It's okay for it to be lower poly or a little bit more minimal. I'm going to hit the C hotkey, use ML to add in a loop. I'm just going to add this right in here. Use UL to select the inside. MW to bring it in, MT to bring it out, UL to hit this loop in here, MT to reduce it in, and now we have a little button, which is pretty nifty. Now, I like to see what these things will look like voxelized. And the really nice thing about having this castle and these bumpers done is that we can also reuse our volume builder from this basically. So these are our bumpers. This is our sand castle. I may just rename this sand castle and bumpers, so that way we can just put everything in one and see what it looks like. I'm going to name this start button. Just drag and drop this in here, and you can see there we go, we have a button in here. And for smaller things like that, I'm okay with them having more voxels because I really want them to be able to be read visually and seen. Now you can see that the voxels look a little bit funny as I rotate that. So this will probably be a situation where we might need to adjust the grid inside of the voxel measure. That's one option, or we could take that out. Make a copy of that. Delete everything inside of here. Going to try something else. I could just rotate this whole thing as well, and then the voxel will stay in place. So that's another option. If I do that though, I really want the volume builder to line up with the start button. So I'm going to make sure I have this open and hit reset transform. So now that's nicely lined up, and we want to do the same thing with the RKT Voxel measure. So I'll go ahead and hit reset transform again on that. And there we go. Now we just put the start button as the child of the volume builder as the child of the voxel measure, and we have a nifty little start button here. Now the cool thing about this is we have more buttons that are similar size, and if we just want to lower the complexity of our scene and the number of calculations, we can use the Mo instance. Now I added this into my scene in the last episode. If you missed that, that is Shift C. And if you search for Mo instance, you can find in there. You can also find it under your MoGraph menu. Mo instance. But I docked it here just to make my life easier. I'm going to rename this button. And I'm going to rename the volume builder button. And with all of that done, we can create a Mo instance. You could also use a regular instance. You'll see that there is a regular instance in here, and you can use either. I'm going to go ahead and rename this Mo instance button. And by making it a Mo instance instead of the regular instance, we have some options when it comes to animating them together. And I don't know if we'll use that, but by just like deciding to use it, we're giving ourselves, future selves, more options. So now we have a button. We're going to need another button on the other side. So I'm duplicating that. And I might name these right and left just to make my life easier. I'm holding Shift to use quantize as I rotate this using the R hotkey. That way I snap to increments of 5 degrees. And it just makes things neater. This will look a lot better when it's in color, and the voxels will be easier to read from the voxel measure. I'll leave a link to Rocket Lasso's shop, so if you want to check out the voxel measure, you can for your own project. So that's basically what I wanted in here. I'm giving this a little bit of thought of how detailed do I want to go on the front of this? Do I want to use the larger voxels or the smaller voxels? That is the question. I might continue 3D modeling on this as a form. I think that I could create a little panel right there. Let's go ahead and find our older model. Where did I put it? So this is our octopus. I'll rename this RKT Voxel Measure Pinball Machine because now we have more objects in here. Volume Builder, Octopus, and Pinball Machine. We're going to look at the pinball lower body, and this is this model here. Going to turn these off for a moment. Use ML because we need to add in some loops here. I'm clicking on edge mode to add them in here. We're going to need this panel about there. I'm going to add in a loop, add in a loop. I like keeping things symmetrical, so I'm going to add in a center loop, add in a loop here, add in a loop here, and I'm holding shift so that I'm snapping to the center. And then that way it's symmetrical. I can always grab these polygons, scale them out larger if I want to, or even use the polygon slide to slide them out larger if I decide to. So it does still offer some flexibility. I can use MT now, click and drag out in space in order to extrude this. And I want to see what that looks like in here. I'm going to angle this slightly. Because I want a flatter panel. I'm going to use E. It's just find that perfect spot in here. It is tricky because this whole pinball machine is on an angle, and that does seem to throw things off a little bit. And then we're going to need some more loops in here. So I'm just dropping these in. And I want to select these two polygons. You can still see your original polygons outlined in orange. You can kind of still see the cage, even though I have the voxel mesher on, and I'm holding Control and extruding these out. It looks like I might need to move our voxel grid control, so I'm just going to shift this a little bit. To see if I can get this to look the way I want it to. You can also hold the Alt button and move this back and forth using this. This might be our best option here. Maybe this is okay. I'm going to make sure that our octopus still looks okay. Now that we've moved around the voxels. I think he still looks okay. I might give him bigger eyes later. That's okay. Or put a little seashell in his hair. I don't know, I'm thinking about it. There's options, but I think that this communicates well enough that you can put coins in here, and that was the goal. Copy and paste this voxel mesher button. I'm going to see if it looks okay, but I think that the goal here there we go. The goal for me here is just to see what it would look like if I put a sphere in here for the button on this side, and see if that's something that I want to do with these larger voxels or smaller voxels. Because I'm not entirely sure at this time. I did make the eyes spheres, so it might fit in with the form language if I just made that a sphere too. I might, you know what? Let's just keep it simple. It's going to be a sphere. Sorry, guys. I know I'm like going back and forth on what I want to do. This is my first time 3D modeling it, and I'm just 3D modeling it for the first time with all of you. So this isn't something that I practiced first and tried out all the little details before recording, because I wanted to show the entire process, including the problem-solving aspects of it. Okay, so now we have that button in there. We are going to need our lower pinball body to be adjusted a little bit. And I'm just curious what this looks like now if I turn these off. So I'm looking at this area here, and I'm thinking I want to add in a loop, a little bit right of that voxel, and a loop a little bit left of this voxel. Now you'll see that we have this problem where it's becoming angled. But I'm just going to add in this loop anyways, and then I'm going to use T after selecting it with UL in edge mode. Now that I have this loop selection selected, I can use T and just scale that guy in there to 0%, and then move him over to where we need. Going to need to add in a loop about there and about here. So now we have this polygon here, and we can go back into polygon mode, select it, select those two areas, and just use MT to extrude them out. And this may be another situation where we want to angle this a little bit. So I'm going to angle that. That seems okay. Now you'll notice that we lost that button a little bit, our sphere, so I'm just going to move that out. And if we're feeling extra fancy, we can add in a cylinder. Turn it the right direction. I'll make that 0.2 for right now and just really reduce the height to see what that looks like. I can even line that up with the sphere by hitting Reset Transform. And then I can take it out again and rotate it around. A little bit more, push it back. Reduce possibly the... Well, actually, it's okay if that goes through because it's going to need to push the other ball anyways. I'll think about it, but we could reduce the height further if we wanted to, so it doesn't go all the way through. So there we go. It looks a little bit more like a pinball machine with those added details. Another option is, instead of using a sphere, we could add in a cube. At first I didn't like that idea, but there may be some potential in it of keeping everything extra cube-like. I'm going to hide the sphere. I think that still reads as a pinball machine. And then for this cube, you can even add in fillets. I'm probably going to add a fillet radius on all of these, just so that we can see them a little bit easier. But I'll do that later, once we get closer to coloring everything. I think this works. I'm going to turn off these for a moment just so I can see these. I'm going to use MT to extrude these out. UL to select this loop. If you aren't seeing what I'm selecting, I'll turn off this again. I just want to slide these loops and edges over a little bit so that this is cleaner when we turn on the voxels. So right now I want to turn on that. We could also try this with MO for slide and just try sliding this over. Don't like how this is looking. I will also try just grabbing those polygons perhaps, and that'll work better. So we'll try adding this polygon, that polygon, just seeing what this looks like. Okay, so maybe that's the easiest way to do it rather than sliding it over. There we go. That looks better. So I think that reads as a pinball machine. And we were going to make a treasure chest, I promised at the beginning of this episode, so I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now that I have that done, let's add in the treasure chest. I'm going to use a cube for that. I'm sure you could have guessed. Take in the dimensions a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and make this cube editable by hitting the C button, or you can hit this button here. And then now that I'm in polygon mode, what I want to do is I want to click on top of this cube, use MT to extrude it up. And then I want to select these two edges, 1, 2, and use the hotkey MS to activate the bevel and drag my mouse so that we get a nice little bevel here. And that's the beginning shape of our treasure chest. We're going to use ML for a loop path cut, and we're just going to add in some loops here. I'm going to add one in the center. One here, which it'll add on the other side. I have my enable symmetry, so it's adding it on both sides. Add in something there, add in something here. It's still symmetrical, which was the main point. There we go. But this was a nice way to measure and make sure that everything's going the right way. I'm going to dissolve these two edges using MN after I select them with UL. And I just want to double check that these are all orange on the outside. We don't want any backwards polygons. That's looking good. Now I'm going to select these polygon loops in polygon mode, and that should select them on both sides, and I'll use MT in order to extrude these out. You'll notice that we have a little bit of an issue here. And that's actually from when we beveled it, and that's why we were having issues before, possibly. Oh, you know what it might be? It might be an issue because I'm using symmetry, because it seems to only be happening on one side. So I'm going to hit undo, and I'm just going to see what happens if I select these both separately with the symmetry off, and then hit MT. That time it worked better, so that's interesting. Anyways, that's basically what we wanted, although we also have these on the bottom, and I didn't want them there, so I may solo this and just deselect those bottom ones and do that again. MT, hit apply, and there we go. That looks better. But if they aren't the size you want, you can always hit undo. You can extrude them out. Widen them if you'd like to. The symmetry button isn't quite working the way I'd like it to today. I'm going to use the quantize and scale this up 200%, and then I'll do the same on the other side in the Y direction just to make sure that these are symmetrical, even though I'm doing them separately. And I'm holding shift to make sure that I'm landing on the 200% because that enables quantize. Now with both of these selected, I'll go ahead and try extruding them again and deselect the bottom. So MT extrude, and there we go. I'm going to use ML to add in a loop right here, add in a loop here, and a loop here. Going to extrude out these two, and this will be a fairly stylized little treasure chest. And we can imagine what this will look like scale-wise for when we add in the little cubes by looking over here. So we do have the capability of adding in some details, potentially. So what I'd like to do is add in a star spline here. So let's see, we have star, and I want the star to line up with the cube. So I'm going to put it within the cube and then hit reset transform. And you can see our star is huge, so we're going to need to adjust some of the settings in here. I'm going to adjust the outer radius and the inner radius, make this really, really tiny. Let's do 1 and 2 just to start off with. I'll probably scale this up, but I just wanted to get it in the right place. Maybe we'll try 2 and 3. And then I want to adjust which direction it's going. I want the number of points to be 5 because I'm thinking of this as being a starfish, and I think that could be cute. Inner radius, outer radius. I'm going to try an inner radius of 1. So now we have the star shape. I might try extruding it first. So we have the extrude in here. We're using the generator this time. And I'll drop in the star. Now we are extruding this too much, so I'm going to change the offset to something much smaller, like that. And we're starting to get somewhere. You'll notice that this doesn't have a ton of polygons, so it's going to be very hard to bend this. So we're going to change our caps from being an n-gon to a regular grid, and we're going to make our grid 0.5 and see how that looks. I think we can go even smaller potentially. So I'm hitting the Alt button and slowly moving this back even more, trying to get a more detailed grid. That might be okay. And I want to also make sure that there's a lot of subdivisions on here, perhaps. I'm going to try something else. I'm just going to preserve the top part of the star for right now, and then use UF to delete the rest of it, because I think it might be easier to get this part in position with all those polygons first and then extrude it afterwards or thicken it. So that was a little bit of trial and error. Sometimes I try out a few different things before I land on exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to add in a spherify, and I'll hold shift so that that ends up being right underneath this. I'm going to adjust its strength and move it up, maybe down. Increase it a little bit more. Okay, so now we have this nice little star, and we can use this in a few different places. But now it'll be easier for us to place this star anywhere we'd like. And we can put this within a thicken generator. Here we go, star inside of the thicken, and it's thickening way too much. Let's try 0.4. That looks better. So there's our star. Thicken, star. And I'm just going to try moving this. But you can see that our thicken starts all the way down there, and we actually want it to line up with the star. So I'm going to reset transformation with this button selected. And that'll make it change its coordinates to the star. And then I'll put the star back under the thicken. And see if that fixed it. Huh. I thought that we had fixed that. So for whatever reason, the axis isn't moving when I do that. So I'm just going to move it manually now, up. It's kind of funny that I was doing that. Oh, you know what it was? This wasn't moved up either. So I need to move up the axes for both. So even though I was resetting it, I forgot to reset it for the star, so they were both going to the wrong place. There we go. Okay, now both axes are in the right place. Once we're done with that, we can turn off enable axis, and I'm just going to move this guy over. See, 3D modeling is an adventure. You never really know exactly how it's going to go, but it is always fun. I think that's okay. So now I'm going to copy this from our button that we had created, and I'm just going to reuse the volume builder and volume mesher, since we set those up earlier, to put in the thicken. But first, I'm just going to reset it. So reset the transformation so that when I put this in here, it looks a little bit better. So there's our star. So fun. And we'll add our treasure chest in there. I'll rename it Treasure Chest. So fun. And once we add colors to these voxels, it'll be easier to visually see what's what. It's a little bit confusing visually before you add in the colors, so no worries. If you're not sure about it now, it will look better later. You'll notice that this lines up with the star because that's what I lined it up with. It might look, something that you might want to play around with is if you'd like it to line up with the treasure chest instead. I'm kind of feeling this though, so I'm going to keep it how it is. I'm also going to copy this and paste it again and remove the treasure chest from here because I have this idea and I'm not totally sure if I'm going to like it, but I'm going to try it because we're being adventurous. So I turned on the coordinate system. You can also do that using W. That's the hotkey for that. And I'm just going to move this star up here. And I thought it might be cute to give our octopus. Oh, I need to turn this back on so it's easier to move. I thought that would be fun to give our octopus a hair accessory. So I'm just gonna move this over here. Oh, that looks so funny when I scale it up. Maybe I want to do that a different way. I might change this to be... That's way too big. 2. Now it just looks like a cube. So now I need to scale up our actual star to bring back in some of that information. I'm going to try moving the volume builder this time, and then scaling up the star. So it looks like I need to adjust this a little bit further. I'm going to move the spherify in here. I'm trying to turn this in a way where I like the voxels and how they look. I turned on quick shading just so that I could see this a little bit better. I think this looks nice with the star on top of the octopus. So I'm going to move forward with that. And we also have it on the treasure chest, which I think looks nice. So you can reuse the assets that you build wherever you see fit and try out different things. I'm going to go ahead and name this Treasure Chest. Name this Treasure Chest. So now it looks like he has a starfish barrette in his hair. Or he's wearing a hat. I don't know. I think it's cute though. It kind of reminds me of Animal Crossing, and that was one of our inspirations on the mood board, so I'm gonna run with it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video here before it gets too long. The next episode will be working on 3D modeling some ramps for the pinball machine and those final details before we start getting into painting the individual voxels and animating them. So that'll be a lot of fun. Hope to see you then.